Shadow Minister Gareth Davies.
Madam Deputy Speaker, thank you. I'd like to start by congratulating the honourable member for securing this debate, and actually congratulate him on giving what I thought was an incredibly moving speech, telling the story of Sasha and, of course, 19,000 children. It is absolutely heartbreaking what is happening in Ukraine, and he is right to raise those concerns with the House today. Now, just as we start every new year, many people have entered 2025 last week with hope, optimism and with determination that this year will be better than the last. It's therefore right that the first debate we have this year is about our united resolve to ensure that Ukraine can continue to oppose Russian aggression, and that we debate ways in which we in this country can continue to support our friend and ally in this task. And we've heard a number of excellent speeches from across the House, which have been both informed and incredibly moving, as I've said. For 1,047 days now, Ukrainian men, women and children have been suffering the consequences of the most recent stage of a war they did not ask for, a war they did not start, and one that continues to claim the lives of so many of their friends, family and fellow countrymen. We on this side of the House are proud of our record of support when it comes to the people of Ukraine. In government, we provided over £12 billion in military, humanitarian and economic support. Because of this, the United Kingdom has rightly taken its place as a global leader in defending Ukraine. The UK was a first mover on vital aid, from helmets and body armour to, yes, Storm Shadow missiles and Challenger 2 battle tanks. We created safer routes for those fleeing the conflict with the Ukrainian Family Scheme and the Homes for Ukraine scheme, which many members in this House participated in. We established Operation Interflex, which has now trained over 50,000 Ukrainian recruits on British soil since the illegal invasion in 2022. And we imposed the largest and most severe set of sanctions that Russia has ever seen, with 2,000 individuals, companies and groups sanctioned. This ensures that we're not just targeting the sectors of strategic significance to the Russian government, but that those in and around the Kremlin have been left with nowhere to hide, no matter where they are based. And just as President Putin has so far sacrificed the lives of hundreds of thousands of his own countrymen on the altar of his own personal imperial ambitions, he seems determined too to destroy the future prosperity of the Russian people. And just as my right honourable friend for South West Wiltshire was saying, Putin must be made to pay for his actions. And I know a number of members have made this clear. Ukraine must continue to be supported in their fight against Putin's war machine. And therefore, we welcome that this government is continuing much of the vital work that we started to strengthen the Ukrainian response. But we know that British support for Ukraine is underpinned by our willingness and that of our NATO allies to also invest in our own defence. That's why I hope the government will keep their pre-election pledge to increase defence spending in this country to 2.5% of GDP. Now, as I've said already, like many times before, I'm pleased that there is such a clear consensus of support for Ukraine in this House, on military support, on humanitarian aid, or indeed on sanctions. Where government takes responsible and sensible steps to further this, we, as the official opposition, will of course support them. The last Conservative government was one of the most vocal proponents of repurposing frozen Russian assets, and we drove our G7 and European allies to coalesce around the most ambitious solution. And the announcement by the Treasury on the 22nd of October that the UK would contribute £2.26 billion to the G7 Extraordinary Revenue Acceleration Loans to Ukraine scheme does represent progress on that journey, and we very much welcome that. But we should never stop looking for innovative ways that can legally mobilise frozen sovereign assets. So it would be good to hear from the Minister what further steps the government is exploring on that. And when debating the issue of frozen Russian assets, I think it'd be helpful for the House to be provided with the most up-to-date information. So first, can the Minister update the House on the total value today of Russian assets frozen by the G7 and on the total assets frozen by UK jurisdictions? Secondly, can the Minister give some indication of the allocation of frozen assets by type? There's been some discussion of that today, but I think it would be very helpful if the government could give an indication of that breakdown for colleagues today. Now, of course, today's debate is focused on the seizure of frozen Russian assets to assist Ukraine. The Minister will be well aware, and this has been discussed at length today, of the various legal considerations, both internationally and domestically, on the specific subject of seizure. Given recent comments by the EU's chief diplomat, I look forward to the Minister clarifying exactly what the government's position is right now, and to update the House on the latest discussions, as many have called for today, that the government has had with our G7 partners and with other allies on the specific subject of seizure. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, we should never allow ourselves to forget what this is ultimately all about. While many of us return to this place after what I hope was a very restful and even perhaps indulgent Christmas break, I'll remind the House that people of Ukraine faced a very different Christmas. Nowhere was this better illustrated than on Christmas Day, as Ukrainians gathered together at St. Michael's Cathedral in Kyiv, praying for peace and for victory in 2025. Their prayers cruelly interrupted by the piercing sound of air raid sirens. Be in no doubt that the fight continues, not just for those on the front line, but for all those who want their country to be free again.
Will the Shadow Minister give way?
Yeah.
I'm grateful to the Shadow Minister for giving way, and I can hear in his speech that he's coming to a conclusion. The Shadow Minister is himself a former investment banker, and so I'm very curious to know, what is the position of His Majesty's opposition on the seizure of frozen Russian assets?
Very much welcome the intervention. I think, look, in terms of our position in government and our position in opposition, is that we should do whatever it takes to hold Russia to account, to ensure that Russia pays, and that we support Ukraine. And I've set out a number of ways, financial and other, that we did that in government. In government and in opposition, we clearly have concerns about legal obstacles that may or may not exist, and that is right that we debate that today. But also, yes, the impact on markets and sentiment and investor confidence. And I think it's not as simple as perhaps some are suggesting. There are a number of factors, but we should leave the option open, and we should continue to explore all options when it comes to, as I say, supporting Ukraine and holding Russia to account and ensuring that they pay. I'll take one more.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. I think really the key point is that was made by my honourable friend for Runnymede and Weybridge about the distinction between the private assets, even such tainted ones as are held by oligarchs, and state assets. And the mover of this motion will correct me if I'm wrong, but the $300 billion worth of assets that are referred to in the motion are actually state assets, and no fewer than 11 professors and other legal experts in a publication by the International Institute for Strategic Studies in May last year were unanimous in saying that when it comes to state assets, there is no legal obstacle for a seizure by a third-party state like ourselves.
Well, I welcome the intervention by my right honourable friend, who is extremely diligent in his assessment on such matters, and I'll allow the Minister, who is actually in government, to provide the government's legal assessment of what may or may not be possible. But I've set out the concerns that we have, which we're very happy to continue to debate and discuss, as I've said. But it is right that across the House, we continue in our support for Ukraine. It's right that we continue to discuss all the ways in which we can support them, and if there is a way, we should look at it. Thank you.